This week on Culture Q,
SNL gets its first ever non-binary cast member.
Harbison returns to Fashion Week.
And we give you all the deets on how to check your voting eligibility. What is going on? Is Anlawani here.
And I'm Shar Jossel. This is Culture Q.
And here's some of the highlights from this week in queer culture.
Is there ever a quiet moment in queer Hollywood? Listen, these are the stories that are making all the noise all over the internet. Comedian Molly Carney has just been added to the next season of Saturday Night Live. Their induction will cement them as the first ever non-binary person on the main cast. Carney got a huge break when they were cast in Amazon Prime's A League of Their Own. This on its own was enough to celebrate, but add in a move to New York to star in the world-famous sketch show, and you've decimated some items on that bucket list. Instagram and Twitter were very happy as they posted their congratulations. A League of Their Own co-star Molly Ephraim commented, 10-pound baby, destined for greatness, baby, along with others from the cast like Darcy Carden and Abby Jacobson. On Twitter, Jeffrey Masters, who is the senior producer of the New Yorker Radio Hour and the host of LGBTQ Pod, reacted with a joyful tear emoji. Carney joined the cast with 3 other newcomers, Marcelo Hernandez, Michael Longfellow, and Devon Walker. These additions came after the announced departures of Kate McKinnon, Pete Davidson, Aidy Bryant, and Kyle Mooney. With Worlds just around the corner, the internet's favorite troll thought it was time to shake things up.
I guess part of me wanted to try something new. I left my stamp on pop music. I left my stamp on culture. So now, I decided to be the new president of League of Legends.
If you were born before 1999, you may be wondering what the hype is all about. League of Legends was developed by Riot Games and is a huge multiplayer online battle arena video game. League of Legends has become known for their massively popular annual World Championships. Now, viewership for these tournaments outperformed the NBA, the World Series, and the Stanley Cup. Now, it's huge because it's now being run by one of the most popular queer rappers of today. Along with the partnership, Lil Nas X will create an anthem for Worlds, which will debut on Friday. He'll also have his own in-game skin and prestige character.
Did you know that several states will not allow you to vote if your gender identity doesn't match your name and sex? Well, things are about to change. You might have heard about a ban on changing your gender on your birth certificate in Montana. Thankfully, a judge has blocked the ban, but Montana officials are trying to find a way around it. Now, why should we care right now about voting rights? Well, it's midterms, and with the Marriage Equality Act being pushed until after midterms, now is the perfect time to make sure the seats are flipped in your favor. Voter suppression is kind of a big deal for all sorts of marginalized folks, but this year the war against transgender voters is especially heavy. According to a study by the Williams Institute, there are nearly 878,300 eligible transgender voters. Because of these voter ID laws, over 25% or 203,700 people could be blocked from casting their ballot. Here are some scary stats from the Movement Advancement Project. In order to change your gender marker, apparently 10 states require documentation from a medical provider, 8 states require proof of surgery, and 12 states require trans people to undergo a gender-affirming surgery before revising a birth certificate. Now, in total, there are 414,000 trans voters who live in 31 states that have in-person voting and require voter ID, and nearly half these voters don't have a corrected ID. As anti-trans legislation sweeps the nation, it may seem hopeless to figure out what to do. Thankfully, there are resources like VoteRider, transequality.org, Headcount, and Prospect that will help you determine if you are able to get your ID updated quickly and safely. LGBTmap.org also has an excellent map that can help organize your search. Vote Riders can help with the documents and can even help cover some of the costs or set up rides to the DMV. Trans Equality gives information about volunteer attorneys who help people at the polling places. If you are looking to amend your gender marker on your ID, be sure to check out these resources, and again, make sure to vote in the upcoming midterm elections.
From marathon inclusion to free gender-affirming surgery, this week's stories are giving the benefits of inclusiveness. Over the last few weeks, we've reported on the never-ending story that is Belgrade trying to hold their Europride 2022 parade. Since then, the parade was canceled by the government, citing safety concerns from the amount of protests against the parade from the religious right. Then Europride clarified that only the organizers could cancel Pride, and they had no intentions of doing so. Now, an agreement was reached and then suddenly discarded over a route dispute. It took a petition of over 29,000 people to finally get the government to allow the parade. Naturally, while the event was met with joy and celebration, it was also met with protesters. 10 officers were slightly injured, 5 police cars were damaged, and 64 protesters were arrested. Prime Minister Anna Brnabić says, "I am very proud we have managed to avoid more serious incidents. I personally cannot wait until next year." Last week, it was announced that both Boston and London would be adding non-binary categories to their marathons. This is a great show of visibility for non-binary runners who have often felt misplaced. A runner named Jake Fedorowski explained, "I'm not going to give money to races that don't affirm or celebrate my identity." Up until the category was added, conversations with non-binary runners showed a need for different designation. Non-binary athlete Cal Calamia said, "The Boston Marathon is the pinnacle of marathons, so to be heard by them is a sublime shift in the running community." Berlin has followed suit, and both New York and San Francisco have had a category since 2021. Of the World Marathon majors, Chicago will feature the category this year. The only to hold out so far is Tokyo. If you want to travel somewhere in Europe that's a safe haven for queer people, you could give Malta a try. This Mediterranean island state is known for being a popular tourist destination. Now, Malta is beefing up claims that it's a top destination for medical and health tourism. Prime Minister Dr. Robert Abela has promised large reforms for the country's LGBTQ+ community, including free gender-affirming surgery for trans people. Since 2015's passing of the Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and Gender Expression Act, which banned conversion therapy, Malta has tried to make amends for the homophobia of its past. During Pride this year, Dr. Abela also announced the lifting of the ban on gay men donating blood. He said on Facebook, "That way we will have fairer protocols that remove any form of discrimination with LGBTIQ+ people." Dr. Abela went on to say, reforms remain at the top of the government's agenda, not least in the equality sector. While these are positive steps forward, some see these reforms as a way of distracting from the fact that women still don't have rights over their body. Malta's anti-abortion laws are some of the most stringent in the world. Malta also just announced their newest political candidate, Thomas Cass Malia, who is the first trans candidate in Maltese history. We hope this is a step in the right direction for reform of all of Malta's people.
This week in the US, we're celebrating lots of special occasions. The 22nd is National Singles Day, the 23rd is Celebrate Bisexuality Day, and the 24th begins Rosh Hashanah. We're also in the midst of Hispanic Heritage Month, and you guessed it, we have some amazing titles for you to celebrate. Our first selection is Casanova Was a Woman. Casanova Canto is a 5'7" blonde, blue-eyed Cuban American. She's a struggling actor and failing spectacularly in her greatest role to date. Someone who is attracted to her husband and not other women. Add to that drama, her Spanish soap star mother, a homophobic sister, her yogi therapist, and a random naked guy, and her dilemma encounters tons of twists. We see her as she struggles to make her attractions and her culture meet. Next, there is Strut, where we follow Eddie and her friends as they try risky new endeavors that pay off in unexpectedly positive ways. Eddie is a geeky adult film editor whose low self-confidence has turned her into a hermit. Her friends Ava, Lucy, and the fabulous Chandelier vow to save her from her sad life. They decide to start a high-end escorting agency, and as you can imagine, shenanigans ensue. Last but not least, we have Ruth Weiss, the beat goddess. Ruth Weiss escaped the Holocaust and became one of the most influential poets of the Beat generation. A jazz troubadour at heart, her creative worlds endure as an act of resistance on behalf of all unheard voices. And of course, for all of these unique stories and so many more, you can find them right here, right now on Revry.
A self-described deeply religious university is embroiled in a civil war within itself. Yeshiva University, which is an Orthodox Jewish university, has dealt with the latest blow in a war that has gone on for months. Yeshiva University's rabbis have been credited with saying things like the coronavirus was punishment for the pride parades. and that teenagers should be forced into conversion therapy to stop being queer. It makes it that much clearer why LGBTQ students need to be protected. During 2018, a group of students created Yeshiva University Pride, or otherwise known as YU Pride. The school was less than pleased. After refusing to recognize the club then sued, leading to New York Supreme Court Judge Lynn Kotler ruling the university was in violation of the city's human rights laws. Yeshiva University insists that the ruling was a violation of their religious freedoms, and they countersued. The case made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. Initially, it looked like the ruling would go to the way of the school, but Judge Sotomayor allowed Yeshiva University to not recognize the club and put a stay on Judge Kotler's ruling until the school could fully appeal. Now that would have been that, except in an M. Night Shyamalan-worthy twist, the Supreme Court voted 5-4 to not block Judge Kotler's order, which required the school to recognize the club. So of course, Yeshiva decided to tuck their tail between their legs and pack it on home. YU Pride insists all they wanted was the same access to the facilities that the school's 87 other clubs had. Instead of granting this courtesy, Yeshiva decided to gag them and shut down all of the clubs. Yeshiva says it's to regroup going into the holidays, but YU Pride sees it as an obvious tactic to get the student body to view them unfavorably. Still, the students are prepared to move forward and hope and pray that other students are not swayed by the deception.
If you didn't catch it, New York Fashion Week showcased a variety of queer fashion artists who rolled out the next big trends. But one designer wants to make his fashion more mindful and more accessible. Owner of the eponymous Harbison label, Charles Harbison is a young designer who acquired a great deal of success at the beginning of his career. Launched in 2013, by 2016 he had dressed the likes of Michelle Obama, Beyonce, and Solange. All the success proved to be overwhelming to Harbison, especially in the face of a broken heart. And so in 2016, he left the fashion industry entirely. It ended up being a healing decision, and now Harbison is back on a new mission.
Our desire to make clothing that is legacied and that will live in the world and live in your life for a long time, we want fabrics that will do the same thing.
Harbison's return was collaborative as he created partnerships with Banana Republic, creating an affordable line inspired by the woman in his life, and even with So.ty, where he's created gender non-conforming pieces that will appeal to the fashionista in all of us. Harbison is nurturing these two lines along with the relaunch of his own line, Harbison, and the fashion world has welcomed this new project. Harlem's Fashion Row praised the line as Harbison took part in the Black in Fashion Design House. There, he received a Royal Icon grant to keep killing it. Harbison's celeb fans are still enamored with his gorgeous studs. Jodie Turner-Smith wore one of the gowns to the Venice premiere of The Whale, and Janelle Monáe was just seen modeling for the brand. Along with this much-deserved recognition, Harbison has received write-ups in Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Essence, Refinery 29, and so many more publications. This time, Harbison is ready.
You gotta love a brand that wants everyone to look good.
And I have to admit, the website is stunning and just beautiful.
It really is. Well, that's all for us this week here on Culture Q. I'm Shar Jossell.
And it's Annie Lawani signing out.
Thanks for hanging out with us this week.
And be sure to join us every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, live and always on demand, right here on Revry.